Whether you're a brother or whether you're a mother, you're staying alive, staying alive. Feel the city breaking and everybody shaking, and we're staying alive, staying alive.
All right, I'm Louie J, and this is the podcast, Staying Alive with Louie J. Thanks for joining me today, and here we are, back at it again. Frank, good to see you back, bud.
You too. It's been how many weeks since we've podcasted last? Several weeks. I mean,
several weeks.
This last lockdown, we were like, that's it. We're not.
Yeah.
You know, I've been vaccinated now. How about yourself?
Yeah, I got vaccinated as well. I'm taking care of my elderly grandmother, so I'm an essential caregiver, qualified on the first round of vaccinations, so took advantage of that as soon as it happened. Got in there. Process was really quite streamlined. I feel like there was a magic bubble around me.
Yeah.
You know, I felt like that there was an extra layer of protection. Of course, it still doesn't have us acting differently. We still wear masks. We're cautionary. We are still in this kind of, vacuum of sorts. But that got us to the point where you and I said, let's just take a break for a bit because it was another lockdown and it was stay-at-home order, and we want to be respectful of what the orders are.
Yeah.
So it's nice to be back. It's nice to be. I mean, we're not out of this lockdown yet, but we're at least coming to the end of it.
Yeah, and there's a general feeling out there that I sense with people, just the way that they're carrying on, that we're near the end of this thing, and I hope it's true because in the U.S., I mean, they're at sporting events now. I know the UFC had close to 15,000 people in their last venue in Houston on Saturday. It's like they're just forging ahead, and most of the adults are vaccinated with their first shot in the U.S. too.
Yeah, no, if not both. I mean,
Right.
It sounds like they were rapid fire, and from my understanding, the likes of Florida, everything's back open. Texas back open. A number of states, in the reopening are getting back to what we would consider normal, which is great. I think only because the cases are so low. So it's a true indication that vaccination is really the key out. It's the way out here.
Yeah.
And so, I can't wait to be able to get to that point where we've got, everybody safe.
Yeah.
And you get to go back to shopping. And at the same time, too, I do really still enjoy the time that I've been given, I just got back from the cottage. I know a stay-at-home order says you're not supposed to travel, but let's face it, there's some logic behind it. I'm going to an area where there's nobody else. And that place for me is a good place to kind of refresh and clear in the mind. And, I arrived there.
Is that like 2.5 hour drive or something like that?
Yeah, it's 2.5 hour drive northeast of Toronto, and the drive is part of the beauty. I used to get so frustrated when I was younger that the drive would be too much. It was like, I got to get there.
Yeah.
When in fact, I look at it like it's part of the journey. So those little trigger moments along the way when you see that one curve that says, okay, now I'm half an hour out. I'm out of the city, and you feel like the lights are all gone and you're just swinging by trees. I mean, there's something really relaxing about that. Put your mind at ease, you can pop in.
As long as it's not all highway driving, most of it from when I went up to your place last, we podcasted from your cottage that one time. The first part was a bit of highway and the rest was just perfect 2-lane going through these remote towns. It was, I loved it.
Yeah, me too. I've learned to love the journey, and so with my kids. They don't complain about it at all. Some people have this threshold for pain that under 2 hours is where they have to be to get to their vacation property. But 2.5, pushing it a bit, it makes me feel like it's that extra half hour of just decompression. And at the same time, when you reverse that on your way back, you start to build into. You go from trees to pavement to more pavement to more pavement, and then it's trees, it turns into, buildings, and now you're back in the thick
cell
of it.
towers.
Yeah, cell towers are your true indication of where you're at. But it helps me on both ways, up and back. This was an interesting trip, only because I arrived to what looked like a down tree. It was starting to rain. Looked like a down tree in my kind of driveway. I wouldn't call it a driveway. It's really just a pathway.
Through a forest.
Right, yeah. And then when you get there, I realized there was a bunch of trees down. And as I got up for closer inspection, saw that the trees actually took out all the power lines to the cottage. So, here I am. It's now a little too late in the evening for me to kind of like, am I going to stick around? Like, what am I going to do here? I got to clean up this mess. And, it not only ripped out the power lines, but it ripped out the mast that holds all the power lines into your property. And, you know that they're there, but you don't recognize, what kind of damage can come of it. And of course I'm surrounded by trees. So anyway, the mast, which is probably a 6x6, piece of wood, probably from the 1960s. It wasn't new by any stretch. Anyway, it got ripped right out. There was downed wires. I thought this is probably a hazard. But then I realized somebody came and taped up the exposed wire. They did electrical tape around it.
Really?
Taped it to the actual hydro pole.
Wow.
And so the wires that were on the ground weren't live, which was good. But of course, I had a full trailer of stuff to bring in. And, start doing that over top of tree trunks and, branches, and in the middle of the rain, you want to protect your stuff on the trailer. It was quite an adventure. I felt like it was a great start to cottage season.
Yeah.
Early on. And of course, we're right in black fly season. So,
oh, God, yeah.
Yeah. And
that's not to be up there right now.
Yeah. You really have to have a different mindset for it. You have to be tolerant, and you have to realize this is my thing.
Yeah.
Like, I get out there and I actually pretend I have a protective force around me. Like I've got like this shield, and they don't bug me. And when they start to bug me, I'm talk to myself, and I convince myself that it's not worth bothering. It doesn't bother me. It's okay. It's fine. And next thing you know, I've talked myself into the fact that they're not even there when they are, but it works. I do the same thing
Really?
when I pump gas in the winter.
Yeah.
I do the same thing.
Yeah.
I get to the gas tank and I put my nozzle in, and I talk about how warm it is. Because I'm freezing, I'm like, this is hot, this is warm, this is hot, this is warm, hot. And soon enough, I'm hot. Like, it's the power of suggestion.
Wow.
No mosquitoes, no black flies, and no cold air.
Wow.
That's what happens.
I'm going to have to use that
It
next
is.
time I'm out fishing.
There is something about it. I'm being honest. Like, for me, I keep on using my brain to tell me what I need to hear so that I feel good about it.
Yeah.
And that was one of them. The other one is actually, this is a cool one. Not at all related to the cottage story, but we did a national meeting for a client this year, and I came up with a theme, and the theme was mindset. We talked about it before, and it's really relevant to what we're all going through, right? You can approach anything with the right mindset. The worst of conditions can be made out to be the best. And I had a writer friend of mine write some words in a poem or a stance, and it basically was around how you can affect mindset so that you could really get what you're after. And there was one line in that series of words that he wrote down that we ended up getting the client to do. I call it a DIY. They basically read lines from this poem. Individually, they all have a meaning, but when you put them all together, it's a really powerful kind of statement.
Right.
And the one line that I live by today, and I say it over and over again daily, is that I'm just going to make sure I got it right. The way I do anything is the way I do everything.
Right.
It's magic,
Yeah.
man. If you just think about it for a second, I'll say it again. The way I do anything is the way I do everything. And when you can realize that you're the one who's 100% accountable for anything that goes on in your life, and I'm talking about the things that you hate to do, that you can cut a corner, shortcut this, just leave it there because somebody else will. Talking about like the mundane things, that actually now in my mind, I think have made me a much better person and a more thorough person. I go to the umpteenth ending of it, and it's okay if it takes me a little longer. A perfect example is, you're cleaning up and, something drops, the paper towel drops, and, you got a handful, you got to go out to the shed or whatever. I'm just thinking about the things that would normally just be bypassed because somebody else will take care of it.
Right.
But I know that I dropped it. I'll say to myself those words, the way I do anything is the way I do everything. And that forces me to go back and make sure that I picked it up, put it in the right place, take the job to the 100% level, like go the extra mile. And I'll tell you, the reward is something I never expected to receive. And that is the satisfaction that I did it. I did the whole thing, start to finish, soup to nuts. And it became kind of like that ongoing conversation. It happens every day. It doesn't, because you're always forced and challenged to do something you don't want to do or you don't like to do. And you would be perfectly fine leaving at 80% completion.
Yeah.
I'm not of that mindset anymore. It's
Yeah.
taken me like, well, we did our national shows in January and February. Here we are in practically June. We're at the end of May right now. Or no, we're middle of May. We're middle of May.
Middle.
It's hard to tell sometimes. In any case, I've had that time to be able to get into this routine. And the routine has helped me like on so many levels. Even to the point where, I'm catching the comments from the family, like stuff that, I would be critical of because they didn't take it to completion. They quite quickly let me know what I didn't take to completion. And now there's really nothing that doesn't go to completion. It's pretty powerful.
Wow.
Yeah, I suggest you try, bud.
Yeah, I do that when I'm doing dishes. It's like you can look at it as, I'm gonna have to wash dishes for the rest of my life with
Right.
4 kids, and we're a team here, but we're under renovation. We're living in a basement, no dishwasher. It's like if you think about it, it's overwhelming, and you can tell yourself, "Oh my God, I can't wash another dish." Or
You can approach it.
the way I do is the way I do everything. I also do a thing where I say, "I'm doing this now," and that's what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And it just lifts me up that little bit so that I can complete the task. But I also take that mindset too, where it's like, no, these things are going to be freaking spotless.
Yes.
And they're going to go put away, nice and dry, whatever the case may be. And just have no negative feeling about the process of the task that I'm doing at hand. Trust me, during this renovation, I've been very hands-on with this renovation. Even though we have some trades there, I'm doing a lot of the work myself too. And some of it, putting Pac's wardrobe together for 10 hours, you can get a little irritated and pissed off. You just kind of whistle your way through it. And then, like you said, you get to look back and go, wow, look at what we accomplished today.
Yeah, there's no lingering moments there where you go, I could have just taken an extra 5 minutes.
Yeah.
What would it really have taken? But you say Pac's wardrobe. Those are divorce words. Like those are the ones that start the big fights that you just don't know how to get out of. I mean, I'm fortunate. I've never had that.
Yeah.
Tammy doesn't help me assemble anything. So, and now I'm super fortunate in that my kids can assemble IKEA. So that gets that off of my plate. But back to that concept though, there's been a lot of moments where you recognize that, hey, I did this, and it might have been very insignificant in the grand scheme of things, but that gets back to the point. Everything and anything.
Yeah.
The way I do anything is the way I do everything. So that means the smallest of things. If you didn't take care of them in the right way, then, what else don't you take care of?
It keeps you in line too, where particularly now with the lockdown, you do have a little bit more extra time to execute tasks. But
Right.
if you keep it keeps you accountable. It really does, because you're always checking yourself like, you know what, if I let that slide, then I'm that guy.
Yeah, I'm that guy. I don't want to be that guy. I did play that guy, and I took on too much for a long, long time. And some of that other realization that's happening in this whole current condition makes you, take a deeper, more intense look at how you operate. And for me, another one of those kind of like, moments where you realize what you have in front of you, what you can be in control of, and how you can approach things. I really rarely approach anything with negative attitude. I always tell my kids, if they're pissed off because I've asked them to do something, they'll go to their mom right away. And then she comes to try to negotiate, and then I get heated, and I'm like, no, they need to do this. They got to learn,
Yeah.
And then I realize, wait a second, I can't have you do this if you're approaching it with such, frustration or anger or angst. And, you can't do it if you're pissed off, because this is an easy task. And, why would you put yourself into all that over there when in fact you could have had it done 5 minutes ago. You could have been out lounging by the whatever. And I always find that stuff that I want to impart, so I want to ingrain it in my kids' brain, so that when they're talking to their kids, they're gonna say, your grandfather used to say this, and I want those to be those memories that help them kind of toggle through life.
Mm-hmm.
The other one for me that got me really, I guess, on track. I guess I was already on track, but maybe the tracks are gliding a little smoother now. Is changing the word have, I have to, like to I get to. So that to me was another just really simple reminder that I get to do this. And to a lot of people, when you have to, the tasks that are presented to us aren't always fun. Let's face it, there's a lot of work to just maintaining a regular world in this crazy world. And so when you look at your tasks as challenges and you don't look at them favorably, then your outcome could be really, compromised. You could miss out on the opportunity to make this a pleasure and to perfect it and to have you perfect it in the process. So like when I can change and shift my mind from I have to do this to I get to do this, then I realize, wait a minute, I get to do it because I got two legs, I can walk, some people don't.
Yeah.
I have all my faculties, I can perform, some people can't. I happen to have won the gene pool, and I ended up, it was born at this date and this, when other people weren't,
Yeah.
So you think about all the things that you got going for you, and you realize that you're really privileged just to be able to do the dishes.
Yeah.
How lucky are you? Because there's going to be a time when your back might be busted and you don't and you can't, and then what happens?
Yeah.
You'd wish to be able to do the dishes.
Yeah. Just a simple task.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It really makes me kind of focus on how to get through the things that, really challenge a lot of people in the way that they approach things. So for me, it's been those two kind of learnings that have kept this really manageable. So yeah, I mean, outside of that, I mean, I know you're into a big renovation. That in itself is challenging for people. Like, I mean, where's the breaking points? How far are you guys?
Surprisingly enough, like we told ourselves during this lockdown, there's going to be delays, and there's going to be things that we won't be able to purchase materials because supply chains. It's interesting to hear on a daily report from just the trades themselves on what's available and not available now. You can't get electrician guy was saying that you can't get breakers. Breakers are impossible to find right now in the city of Toronto for your electrical panel.
Is that because of supply and demand, like the fact that so many people are doing projects that they would have put off for years?
The thing is, I want to say yes, but it's like that electrician isn't doing 50 more jobs in this month because he can't physically do it.
Right.
And he's always been busy through his career as that trade. I'm sure there are busier times where I'm like, I'm booked for 2 years, but it's like, I always used to have a saying when I used to work in a VTR room, which was a videotape room back in the day when I got into broadcasting. Tape only plays so fast. Like if you hit play on your cassette tape or your videotape, it only plays so fast. So you can't speed up the play button. It's playing.
Right.
I mean, you hit fast forward, it's inaudible or whatever the case may be, but it only plays so fast. And it's the same with the trade. Like it you can put a kitchen in if you have 10 guys in the room, but there's only so much that can get done in a day.
Sure.
And most guys, you have 2 or 3 guys installing a kitchen. You're not going to have 7 guys in there or whatever the case may be. So he's not piling up more work in that week than he possibly can. You know what I mean? He can only be at so many places at one time unless he's got 15 crews out there. So it's really hard to make sense of everything because, the lumber situation, there's a number of reasons why, and I've also watched a ton of YouTube folks talking about the lumber supply and that are in the lumber business and, how that ripple effect happened when COVID came out. They shut it right down, and then Some people caught COVID, so they had to shut it down. And then they had to physically distance, so less people on the line, less production, blah, blah, blah. And then the demand for lumber went through the roof because, I'm not going on vacation now. We're going to build a deck. We're going to build a fence.
Mm-hmm.
So all of a sudden, the supply was shortened or slowed down considerably to make up for that lost time. And the demand, was just flying off the shelf. So anything that came out of the facility was already processed and already paid for by the next order. So there's nothing for the new client that's going, hey, I just need 4 2x4s. I think you can still get the lumber, but the price is astronomical. They do say it's going to go down. It'll level off eventually because at some point people are just going to go, you know what? I have a whole new build that I have to do on a custom built home. It's going to cost me an extra $80,000 just in the lumber material. I'm going to wait.
Yeah, I think you end up forcing people out. I don't really understand the supply and demand issue in the sense that, okay, I get that there was delays. You increase your labor force because you can't have as many people on the job, so timing is going to be pushed back. Mm-hmm. But at the end of the day, how much more is it costing you to produce that lumber? Is it 3 times the amount?
No.
Because that's what they're charging.
Well, then you got guys working overtime, less people, but guys working overtime, so it costs a bit more too. I've heard that synopsis.
I get a bit more, but when you're talking about, like, I just had somebody price a job for me. Because I, like everybody else, want my environment to be just right because we're, of course, who knows what tomorrow's going to bring. I want it to be comfortable and I want all the things that would make it comfortable. And part of that includes these projects that happen to deal in wood.
I kind of feel like right now is a time that people are nesting, I guess. I mean, that's an old term that we've heard when having kids, but they're preparing for the next run.
Yeah.
What's going to happen to our society in the next little while when things do open up. And of course, you hear all these predictions as well as we're going to get into hyperinflation. It's overwhelming. And it's like, you and I talked about it. I sent you this link.
Oh, I loved it.
And I completely forget what it was. So remind me, but you had a great comment where it's like, hey man, at least we can prepare. What was it?
Yeah, so it was called, there was a book that was written, it was something about the turnings.
Yes.
The fourth turning, I think it was, or something to that point. It was about history repeating itself.
Right.
And how the cycle lasts in and around 80 years, or more accurately, the lifespan of a human.
Okay.
And so let's look at that as being the average of 80, some 90, some 70, but on average 80 years. So they basically broke down what's happened historically, which I love this story. I mean, I'm not a conspiracy theory guy, and this isn't even conspiracy. It's just theory.
And it's somebody who wrote a book about a thing that they've been studying.
Yes, in advance of COVID and where we are right now, but it identifies these quarters. Let's say over the 80 years, 20-year intervals was basically, we call them generations. Mm. They call them turnings. The author called it a turning in the book. And fundamentally, it takes you through the path of what that generation experiences, and then, in our generation being Gen X, different than the baby boomers, different than the millennials, different than the Gen Zs. Gen Zs? Is that where we're at?
I think so.
Yeah, I think it is. I think my kids are Gen Z. In any case, what was cool was it identified historically what had happened, in our parents' generation and theirs and before them, when world wars were happening, where revolutions were happening, when people were rebelling against their governments, where people were affluent and everything was great, and money was hand over fist in the development days. And so I can't remember the names of the turnings except for the one that we're in right now, which of course
is the fourth one though,
it's
right?
The fourth turning. So it's called Crisis. And we are, according to the author, we are in the middle of the crisis. And if you don't have to look too far to recognize that there's a bunch of things off kilter right now around the world. And then it looked at the turning before us, which I can't remember what it was called. Damn it. It was in the sense of a correction. There was something that, unraveling. It was something like that, where things were beginning to fall apart. They hadn't got to the point where it was chaotic and crisis mode. We are in the middle of that, and they identify, at this date, the second inauguration of Ronald Reagan was the beginning of that turning, and then we had the next 20 years that got us to where we are right now, and we happen to be in the worst turning, which is the crisis one, where everything falls apart. Every world war that's ever happened, any major infighting that's ever happened around the world has happened during the crisis, where they've lost control.
And also food, starvation, there was a famine, all those kind of
it shook
nasty
people.
things.
It shook people to its core, not unlike what this is doing in a lot of cases, and it's not quite over according to what they were saying. So, only the best is yet to come.
Yeah.
But that's where I looked at it differently and thought, you know what,
my stomach kind of dropped when I read that part. I was like, damn, okay,
right.
It was a good run. So how are we going to handle this moving forward?
Well,
Who's
they
gonna
said that everybody in the turnings all have a role to play. Every generation has a role that kind of they take on.
Yeah.
And in this one particularly, they're saying that it's up to, I listen to what I am because I'm like, what's my job, right? Yep. Of course, being Gen X, it's that we're the fixers. We're intended to repair. We're intended to educate and to help them realize. But the heroes of the fourth turning is actually the millennials. They are going to turn us around. They're going to get themselves back on track, and they're going to make great for the Gen Zs below them. And you can see that, if you look back in our history, that in the 80s when everybody was making it big, and they had
greed was good,
baby. They built it up to a point where, you could work at a gas station back then and own a house, because that was part of how it worked. So this major correction that's really happening, if you want to believe all this, it sounds like you can't argue with history. It happened. Yeah. You know that it's there. And if they were putting these categorized kind of compartments around those decades and those generations, and they're saying, look what happened. Oh, and by the way, 80 years before that, it happened.
Yeah.
and let's just look at it one more time, because 80 years before that, the same thing happened again and again and again. And you recognize that, hey, this is a history repeating itself story. Yeah. And if that's the case, then we need to know what's next. And at least we can look at the fact that somebody's identified what happened next so that we can well prepare and plan for it.
Right.
If I am the fixer, then what do I have to go do? I mean, in this little video you sent me, the author of the video said that, well, if I'm a fixer, then I'm going to get out and fix something. And he said, I noticed the zip line in the park at the end of my street has been broken for a long time. And well, I've got all the tools to go fix it, so I'm going to go fix it. So he actually literally went out to fix something physically, Yeah. I think that you can translate that into spreading knowledge, education, helping them recognize that, hey, listen, we are the last generation that was analog. We might have little smatterings that our kids experience, with a rotary phone and stuff like that. Maybe not. Push button, I'm sure, but they at least know what a cassette tape is. They saw vinyl. They knew of the things that we spoke about. Their children will never know it unless they happen to be interested in vintage and historic things. So we've got a lot of knowledge transfer that could probably help. And when it comes down to fixing it, then I think sometimes getting back to the basics might be the right way to play.
Yeah.
But I found it fascinating, man. I'm like, oh, I love that stuff.
Well, the good thing is it provides you a little bit of a roadmap of what the task is at hand moving forward too. So, okay, we're in a crisis situation. What do you do in a crisis? Like you said, you got to move forward, provide knowledge, and fix things.
Right.
So that we know what we have to do now.
Yeah, we're going to have to, still hunker down, recognize that there's a lot of unknowns, but I think it all gets back actually to the beginning of this conversation, which is around mindset.
Yeah.
Even when I went back to the cottage and I recognized that we were without power, I'm there, in the woods, no power, no heat, no electricity, no water, no nothing. And, either it could have been a fight or flight. You stick it out, you hang in, and it was minus, -1, -2 at night. It got pretty cold. But that makes me realize that I'm living,
Yeah.
and it gets back to mindset. Either I could take care of business, which I got to say was a great experience. When I got over the frustration of the fact that, oh man, look at all this work I got to do here.
You just start doing it.
Yeah, and there was a good moment there where it was raining. It actually hailed. The only thing I was waiting for after this, I was trying to unload a couch from the trailer over top of the tree trunks into the cottage while it was raining so that the couch didn't get damaged. And in the middle of that, it started hailing. And I looked around. I went, I'm just waiting for the locusts to swarm. Like, this is where we're at now, man. This is going to be one of those moments where you just don't realize what's going to happen because it's about to. But in any case, it got me back to this moment where, all that aside, I found myself back to that grateful moment where I'm like, wait a minute, I'm in my cottage, okay? It's pitch black. It was magical. I had the phone of my camera. First time I've been to the cottage since October, so I don't even know where the candles are or are the batteries going to be okay for a light that we might have a flash. I don't know. So as it's raining, I sit down in the rocking chair. I take a couple of rocks back and forth, and I watch the lightning from the porch.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, this is perfect.
Yeah.
And then everything that just happened for the last 2 hours of me trying to get my life back on track was gone.
Yeah.
The frustration was gone. An immense feeling of gratitude came over me because I'm like, when do I actually take the time to watch a lightning storm, you know, and to be an absolute quiet, that buzz that constantly happens in your head, that electricity that's always going when you've got electrical running around you. You don't realize how loud that is until you shut it off.
Yeah.
And when it's not there and it's not present, then you're in absolute complete quiet. The best part of that, I think, was closing my eyes and then maybe an hour or two after the rainstorm had passed, closing my eyes and then opening them, and there's no difference. It was a real, wait a minute, man, this is dark.
Yeah.
There's me in dark.
Yeah.
It's really cool.
You also weathered the storm too, because it could take you down. Like some people, when they face a little bit of an obstacle or a challenge, it could be so devastating to them because they've never experienced any kind of struggle. They would have probably turned around and went back home, and there's no story after that. You know what I mean?
There's no story. I thought about it. I got to be honest. It was like, this is silly that I'm here. Like, it doesn't make any sense. What am I going to actually accomplish? And then sure enough, the next morning, sun was out, a little bit of sunshine into the cottage, got me into doing other things. But there was a moment there where I thought, I should really try to just pack this in. This isn't practical. But practical was out the window. And now I have an incredible memory of a time where most people would have said, thank you, I'm gone.
Yeah.
So I'm grateful for that for sure. It kind of makes me think about, about all the things that we want to do to keep comfort around us and how good we actually can do without it, and, you challenge yourself and you keep on finding these little kind of roadblocks to overcome. And that was one of them, one that I think was a good learning for me.
Yeah. It's good to get, expand. It's kind of like this podcast for us. I mean, we had a good conversation today prior to setting up in here. We're set up in a different area of your shop cabin. Like, tell us a little bit about this room here.
Yeah, so this was, if you can see this online, this is called Canteen, which was an off side of cabin. We ended up breaking through the wall, and the intention was that we were going to make a complement to cabin. It was really intended to be a coffee, espresso, a beverage bar with meat pies that were available for purchase and consumption on site, as well as you could take them home, put them in the fridge and freezer. We ended up interviewing a bunch of producers. We shortlisted them. We tasted meat pies like nonstop.
Yeah.
It was amazing. And then, of course, we got kind of pushed back by some city ordinance, some compliance things that, we need to do X, Y, and Z before we got there. And that was like anything else. You you could have a great idea, but you really got to put it into motion and then find that there's going to be some roadblocks and how you're going to overcome them. So, that became a challenge when we were trying to open up our second location. So Canteen kind of just got shelved. But what this piece of the business does for us is when we have our whiskey nights, when we do our live events, this becomes an incredible servery.
Mm-hmm.
It becomes a private room for private functions. So we can host tastings, nosings, and the likes. We can do education in here. And it becomes, like I say, a great kind of servery when we have food and beverage. So it's never been wasted by any stretch, and it's just waiting to kind of come to life. But it's just like the rest of Cabin. It's got this nostalgia. It's got this rustic flavor, this feeling, and it becomes another operational part of the business. We during COVID, moved another barber chair in here so that we could socially distance everybody. And this one, along with another barber station at the back, became kind of like is this the VIP area?
Yeah.
And people feel special in these spaces. So either way, it's carved out for other reasons, but they've served well, no matter what we ended up using them for.
Yeah, and it's great for us in the podcast too, because I mean, as you know, we're trying to grow this thing and get better every time we produce one and put one together. And I made a suggestion months back too, like we should explore recording in different areas of your shop, because I love where we started and I love where we're going to go. I don't know where that's going to be. That you have another spot in the back too that we've talked about, maybe setting it up a little differently there. But I mean, we're just trying to make this thing I don't know, better than it was several months ago. And we've also been talking about more ideas, guests, and other things that you want to introduce in the podcast. And, it's exciting because we have something to look forward to during this crisis time.
I think, that's part of why this has been really kind of entertaining and adventurous for me anyway, because it gives me something to look forward to and to share. I've had some really great comments back for some people that have listened to the podcasts, and they're interested. Like, what are you doing? Why are you doing this?
Yeah.
And so that begs the question: why are we doing this? What are we trying to get out of this? And I can comfortably say it's got nothing to attach to money because it's more of a passion play. But that's like, if you've listened to any of the podcasts in the past, I've never been attached to the money.
Yeah.
I've never been doing anything to monetize what we're up to. I think that there's a natural way to do that.
And when you figure it out.
When the time's right. It's not what drives us, though.
No.
What's cool about this is that it's this organic, ever evolving state of affairs. The podcast, when we said that we wanted to create something for entrepreneurs, for creatives, for the average family guy, anybody that's really maybe looking to do something but not knowing how, they might find this entertaining, educational, somewhere in between, and if I could share some of the experiences and exposures that I've had, and with your contributions, then we get another view at that same kind of take. That gives us a chance to share some information with people. And then, like I said, they've been very complimentary in the fact that they like what we've done so far. I'm most interested to find out how we can constantly evolve this. So other locations in the shop for sure. Topical, I'm listening to a lot more content. And I think one time during our original podcast, I was talking about I was content overload. I just couldn't get enough.
Yeah.
I'd have my AirPods on and I'd be listening nonstop to people talking about their passions, cooking, and Bitcoin and NFTs, and you could just consume content 24/7 and never starve. You would eat forever.
It seems like we're in an era of prediction right now too, though, eh? Like, so you hear all these. Listen, I spend a lot of time online, so but you hear these people that we're in a work revolution, heading into a work revolution, where if the offices decide to open up, a lot of people are going to choose not to go.
Yeah.
And I heard you have a conversation earlier today with one of your colleagues on the phone, saying that that's all good, but they're going to just source it out to somebody else
Who's going to do it cheaper?
Cheaper.
This is the thing. Listen, mark my words right now. We're going to look back at this podcast.
Yes.
I think it's very cool that we've all found that we can be effective and efficient working from home. It was a curve like anything else, but it was rapid fire and we were forced into it. Once you all take, the same path, then all of a sudden it becomes a little easier to manage. Yeah. Expectations are set, levels are met. Point is that we found that you don't have to be tethered to a desk to do your job.
Right.
And so that in a lot of ways has been very cool. The revelation has been set. Like this is something we should look at moving forward. And so that makes people say, I don't ever want to go back to the office. I don't want to be chained to a desk. I don't need to be. I can be as efficient, if not more, here. I don't pay for gas. I don't pay for extra, I can pull back on my insurance. My car doesn't travel as far. There's all this other trickle down effects from not having to go to work. The brakes on the car aren't wearing. The tires aren't wearing. The mechanics are losing business. So you could see how all of this has something to do. Like our mechanic friend next door to us here doesn't have any business because nobody's wearing out their brakes, you know? And changing tires was just an excuse to go and tell them that they needed to go, look at your brakes. That's a legitimate thing. But he's like, doing 80% less brake repairs. Wow. So anyway, that's the point. The point is that we've all become very comfortable and familiar with the fact that we can work at home and we could be efficient at home. We can do our jobs. However, I will warn you on this notion. You probably heard it somewhere else too, but if you don't present a value of you being in the workplace, then the employer is going to recognize, well, we really can do this satellite environment. We don't have to have people back here. Maybe we should scale down on the size of our office and spend less money on rent. Maybe we should outsource the projects we have to people that can work from home. Now, that's where I think you've got a major challenge in that it's going to take nothing for your employers to realize that they can outsource that same project to somebody who's willing to do it for less.
Abroad.
Like somewhere around the world where the labor force is less and the skill sets are equal, if not higher. The one point of difference is language, and people are learning English like it's the number one language in the world, but it's going to take nothing for them to become fluently efficient in the English language and then replace you because they don't have to be here. So there is a value for you in maintaining the security of having a job, because you could wish your way out of employment if you just leave yourself with the mindset that you can do this from home. Well, then so can somebody else. Yeah. And that's when we're going to be racing to the bottom, like for what, less? Yeah. And now the labor force is charging less. The corporation makes more. They spent less on rent. So you're getting yourself out of a job. You talk about automation taking over people's jobs. I remember when I was a kid, they were worried about robots, and you hear about, the Ford line now has machines that are putting rivets in. That's good. Well, that's no good. We can't have those people taking our jobs. Well, in a lot of respects, for all of us that are looking forward to working from home and want that to be an ongoing thing,
right,
then you could really be, replacing yourself, right, because you haven't created the value in who and what you are. One of my friends is a general manager for a large manufacturing company here in Canada, and his recruitment companies basically said, can you tell me the policy on work from home for any new hire? Can you tell me your policy on are you incenting them to get vaccinated? And if so, is it a financial incentive? So it's like, he goes, well, we haven't really discussed that. We haven't figured out what our next moves are. But what are you talking about for, the opportunities to work from home? And he said, well, nobody is interested in working in an environment anymore. And unless your company has a policy that you're going to at least look at partial days from home, partial days from the office, then we can't take you on as a client, as a recruiter.
Whoa.
So the recruiter said that, the people
These
that
are
are
the parameters.
there, you need to have these policies in place for us to be able to go and secure a labor force for you, a senior management force for you. Like they want to know what the company is going to do or is prepared to do to make sure that the new environment that they want to work in suits their need perfectly.
Interesting.
It is interesting. I think there's going to be a lot of people moving jobs. Like, I mean, right now,
Or even creating their own. Like,
Mm-hmm.
there's some people that were probably sales guys for a long time and then said, "Screw it, I'm making bibs,
Yeah.
leather bibs, or whatever the case may be." They've decided that they're going to just, forget about that career path and just do something completely different and start their own.
Or find that passion play that they just didn't want to take a risk on before. Now risk is high, reward is higher. And you feel like, I got to put myself out there to really kind of get back what I'm looking for, and so people are, I think, less interested in the status quo and more interested in being happy.
It's interesting. I watched this documentary last night, Dave Grohl, called What Drives Us. And he basically focused on his red touring van when he was starting off the band Foo Fighters. And he basically equated it to the fact that all these great bands that are out there have that same story about that van. And,
That's cool.
what it's like to take this concept of being a band, getting in that van, and going out there to the world and saying, "Let's see what happens." And it was very fascinating because he interviewed all these famous musicians, from guys from U2 to whoever it was. And the stories were all the Beatles, Ringo Starr was like, the stories were all the same, exactly the same. How they packed the van, who got to sleep on top, and and how it went from the van to a motorhome to a bus, and then we got to all have our own buses. It was really fascinating.
Yes.
But the whole thing was, they were not, that their mindset, each musician, each band mindset was like, it was this or nothing. Like, we were not going to just give up. This was part of the process of doing whatever that you had to do to get out there.
That's very interesting, because you can see how that common thread would bind them, and they've all been through it. They've, whether they made it to stardom or fame or success or whatever that measure is irrelevant. It's that humble beginning and that stuff that makes you, full of grit. It's very much like being an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
In a lot of respects, we could share the same stories, whether it turned out to be a huge success or not. It was all those early days, those early steps, and a lot of cases missteps, that really ended up creating, the outcome, good, bad, or ugly.
And I'm sure there was always some kind of crisis when you're starting a business in the beginning and you've got low funds and, oh my God, the thing is leaking. What do we do? Pick that up. You figure it out somehow. You can't put two pennies together, but you figure it out, get past that hurdle. You feel like you have some breathing room, and another thing presents itself, and it's an ongoing thing. And then at some point, something gives.
Yeah.
Right.
And either it's the levee breaks and everything floods in, and that's awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, that could be the most positive thing that could happen to you. I also see that you end up being challenged in ways that you never expected. Like this one, for a lot of people, was like, how am I going to make money? And like I said before too, I've never really been so caught up in the money, other than when it came to me feeding other people. That's where I was most interested. How are my staff going to make money? I can figure it out. I'm pretty creative and innovative in the way I look at things. And so for me, this was a chance to be able to step back and see like what else is necessary. So we did some really creative things here, at this particular business, actually in all the businesses. But, here we are 16 months into this, and I'm still evolving the way we operate. Like we're doing a co-branded promotion with American Express. Cobalt members are going to be exposed to the brand in an invitation this week. We're going to teach the fine art of mastering the shave.
Oh, nice.
So that gives us a chance to be able to extend ourselves to another audience in a time when people are spending more time at home.
Yeah. Maybe
Maybe not necessarily as finished and polished as they would be going into the office all the time, but they still want to take care of themselves. So, we're evolving programs like that. Who are we co-branding with? The cool part is that they found us. They invited us to participate and see if that was something we wanted to do. And of course, looking at the opportunity, it would be great for us to be able to put our brand in front of other people. At the same time, we're introducing next week the virtual shopping experience. So because you can't come into the shops any longer, there's a good chance for us to be able to do some customer service over a Zoom call or an iPhone video, where we're going to be able to replicate the in-shop live experience, but really on a personal one-to-one basis. So I can take, anybody that's looking for, let's say, the Father's Day gifts, and they know that Dad would love something from one of our shops, then that's a chance for us to be able to get them maybe off the website, because that's not what they're most comfortable with,
right,
and rather see a touch and feel, and let's talk about the product. So we'll put product experts on Zoom calls, which is going to be very cool, up close and virtual, we're calling it.
Yeah, cool.
And then lastly, something that I'm so excited about, and probably by the time this airs, we would have already launched it, but since day one, I've been dying to put together this great box that's going to show up monthly. And it's not unlike any other subscription box, except it's different. It's a cabin box. So, of course, we're for gentlemen, tastemakers, and those who love us. In this case, it's going to be a box that's going to be not unlike those mystery boxes or those bags you bought from the candy store. You didn't know you were buying. It was either for a girl or a boy. You bought it for $1. You're excited. Half the stuff you threw away. In this case, it's not going to be throwaway. It's going to be cool merchandise that's been curated to be able to, on an ongoing basis, create this excitement and happiness. When you get this box, you're going to die to open it up. You're going to love what's inside because it kind of follows everything that we like when we consider what's going to go on the shelves here.
Yeah.
And on the website, now we can put it together in a monthly subscription box and make sure that you can gift that, to your favorite guy, or pick it up for a treat for yourself. But it's been a lot of effort going into that. And, if we didn't have the time, quite frankly, we might not have been able to get here as quickly as we are today.
Right.
So I look at it like a great opportunity to be able to do something unique and different and keep cabin in the forefront of people's minds when they're thinking about where can I get something cool,
Well, we're getting close. I hope. Like I said at the beginning of the podcast, there's definitely a general feeling where people are feeling like this whole thing is soon to be over. More and more people are getting vaccinated on a daily basis, and it's like, let's just keep on motoring, and hopefully things can get back to some kind of normalcy. I don't think everybody wants to go back to exactly the same as it was.
No.
And we've realized that we've had a year and a bit to reflect and go, a few changes need to be made.
Yeah, if we do all this and not make a few changes, what a shame.
Oh.
Because this was our chance to reset. If we go back to exactly the race that we were living, and in some cases, for some people, it was phenomenal.
I couldn't do it.
I don't want to do it.
Yeah.
I just don't want to do it. I want to take everything we just went through, look at the major learnings, and then recognize that was a gift. Like, as painful as it has been
For a lot of people.
I get it, man. Listen, I'm not trying to make light of it by any stretch. However, if I don't look at it with the right mindset and take advantage of what it gave me, then that would be a total shame.
Yeah.
On that note, then I would like to think that, we're doing something entertaining and educational here, at least at the same time, edutaining. And so to that point, I would love to hear from any of our listeners for ideas for the podcast, formatting, anything really, quite honestly, because this is an organic a kind of program development. We're having a lot of fun with it.
We're getting a bit better too.
I think
so.
we're
just, there was a long layoff, but there's a bit more comfort, a bit more confidence.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. And the only way that these things actually work is if you tell a friend and they tell a friend,
Right.
and next thing you know, we've got a really cool audience. I'd love to be able to, let's say, build an audience that happens to be interested in the things we're talking about.
Right.
Shares them with the friends that they care about, and then we come back to everybody saying, hey, listen, this is what we got.
Yeah.
As a result of us all being together and collecting each other along the way, then maybe we can start some really positive movements. maybe we can start, I don't know, a way to revolutionize something. If it's business, if it's personal, if it's family, if it's, we could actually be the creators of change.
Yeah, that
So
would be pretty exciting.
I don't want to sound too lofty, but at the same time, hey, listen.
Why not?
It only takes one person, right?
Yeah.
So let's all get together. Tell your friends. If you think this is something worth listening to, then I would really be grateful. I think that's kind of a cool thing to do, and let's keep it moving. Thanks, guys, for joining us today. It's Louie and Frank here on Staying Alive with Louie J.